So now that we've seen the PlayStation 5 teardown, we can take a look and see how it compares to the Xbox Series X. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. So we got the PlayStation 5 teardown today. So now we can finally compare the PlayStation 5 teardown versus the Xbox Series X teardown. Now, if you're new to this channel, I'm covering all things next gen. I'm getting both consoles on day one. I'm going to be making lots of videos on that. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate all the support recently. Let's get this channel growing. Now let's get into it. So if you remember back in March, Microsoft invited some YouTubers like Digital Foundry and Austin Evans down to their offices in Redmond, Washington, to take a look at the Xbox Series X, take a look at the teardown and how it's actually put together and built. It was a very cool video. I'll have it linked in the description below if you want to get more in depth on it, but it was a very, very cool video. It showed kind of the engineering genius behind the Xbox Series X and how they were able to fit everything together into that box, into that smaller overall box when compared to the PlayStation 5. And just like the overall engineering thought with making the Xbox Series X, knowing that it was going to run hot, and how are they going to fit all of these components in a compact area without overheating the system. And then today we got the PlayStation 5 teardown with that same exact thing, showing everything that is inside, and now we are seeing how everything is fitting into that PlayStation 5 box so that it does not overheat. And the PlayStation 5 is significantly bigger, I would say, than the Xbox Series X. The form factor and everything, we got some good angles and views of like its actual width and thickness, whereas before we weren't 100% sure how thick it actually was and how tall it was, but now we can kind of see it from that video. This is in comparison to the guy tearing it down. The PlayStation 5 on the table was like the size, was like his whole torso looked like, I mean, that's probably just a perception kind of thing, but it really looked that big. And I'm going to kind of jump back and forth between the two videos because the Xbox Series X teardown was done back in March, and the PS5 teardown being given to us a month before the release of the console, after the pre-orders and everything have come out. You kind of forget just how genius the Xbox Series X build actually is. So the PS5 teardown today really highlighted the difference between the philosophies, I think, of these two companies, Microsoft and Sony, when making these next generation consoles. It seems like to me, now this is just my speculation, and what I think about this is that the PlayStation 5, the internals were built around the design. They made everything have the ability to fit inside of the external design that was probably done and concepted before the internals were actually constructed and actually concepted into how they are going to fit and make the best form factor console. Then we look at the Xbox Series X, which seems like a completely different design philosophy in the sense that a lot of the parts are smaller and it fits into a much smaller case, and overall looks more similar to a PC than a game console, but definitely for a reason. I think the biggest comparison, the thing we can take away from the difference between these two consoles, besides the actual size, is how they're going to go about cooling the system, cooling the SoC and everything. And with the PlayStation 5, they're using that liquid metal, and then they have this massive heatsink that obviously was custom made to be able to fit inside the box itself. On top of that, they're using just one big motherboard that's going to be right in the center of the console. Then you look at the Xbox Series X and what they're doing. They have a main spine for the console, which is this metal piece right here, and they have a dual motherboard setup. So you have the main SoC here on this side, and on the other side you have another board for the IOs for the Xbox Series X. And one of the main reasons why they did this was because it was, for them, the better cooling solution. Basically, you're going to have air going around the entire thing, so that big fan on the top pulling that hot air around the entire, around both boards out of the console through the top. And then what is being put on here is just like a metal sheet, a metal board to kind of hold the board steady. Like it, because of how hot it's going to get in there. If you remember, like I talked about in my previous video with the Xbox 360, the reason why we had that ring of death was because of how hot it got, and there was no really reinforcement for the motherboard, and the components would unattach from the actual board itself, and then you get that red ring of death. And it looks like this build, even with all the heat that's going to be coming from these motherboards, from the chips and everything, it looks like nothing's going to unattach because of all that reinforcement that is there. I think one of the big advantages, one of the big things the Xbox Series X has going for its build is this dual motherboard solution that they have, which really allowed them to make the console smaller than the PlayStation 5 and be able to fit it into a box like this, have it more compact, and then have that awesome huge fan at the top's going to be pulling all of that air out of the console. The other fan actually goes into the Xbox 360 board here, and you can see that the 360 board with all those red ring of death didn't have as much covers and shielding as they do with the Xbox Series X. It was just the motherboard here covered in this one metal plate that went around the entire thing. And one of the big differences here with the Xbox Series X is that it's all kind of modular. They all have these sheets covering the parts of the motherboard, where then it finally gets covered, the end of it, with the SoC covered by this massive heatsink, this square style heatsink that is going to go over and then cover the chip right over it, and then that's going to help cool it down, which is definitely a departure in different build style than what we see here with the PlayStation 5, and then this massive custom built heatsink that is just huge. And it's obviously because of the way that the casing was built that they had to come up with a solution like this to make sure that the cooling was done properly. And then this is how everything stacks up before it actually gets put into the box, and then finally it shows up like this inside the actual Xbox Series X case itself. But to me, it's just interesting. You see the difference in philosophies between the two companies. It looks like Microsoft understands that these mini PC builds will probably be the optimal way to make sure that all these components fit in a compact form factor, but yet still run well and still run cool. So they designed components to be able to fit into a case like this, and it is just like a mini PC tower looking. I think honestly it looks great. Then you have that fan at the top sucking all the hot air out, where then here you have the PlayStation 5, and you can really see that they most likely had this futuristic cool design look for the PlayStation 5 in their mind first, and then they built all of these components to kind of fit that design so that it would actually fit and meet their vision. So I don't know which one is better. All I know, and I'm not trying to make this comparison, and I don't think that the PlayStation 5 is going to fail or that it is going to be terrible or anything like that, so don't put those words in my mouth. But I do think that the design of the PlayStation 5 is more along the lines of the Xbox 360, where we had a lot of those failures, where we had the red ring of death. Not that the PlayStation 5 is going to have that. That's just when I look at this initially is what I think about. Because between both consoles, between the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, there's going to be a ton of heat. There's going to be a ton of heat in those consoles, and the motherboard is going to be under a lot of stress. And that motherboard needs to be reinforced. It needs to not warp, or you're going to have lots and lots of problems. Anyways, those are just my initial thoughts between the teardowns of the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. And one more thing I want to mention just before I finish this video off, and I don't know if it's just me or if other people are thinking like this as well, but I have a little bit of concern with the PS5 because of the way they've been handling everything with giving their consoles out for people to use. It's October 7th. The console comes out on November 12th. And literally the only person and only people that have been able to really touch the console has been Sony themselves and a couple of influencers in a very controlled environment with a very limited features on the actual PlayStation 5. Where you can see with the Xbox Series X, they have been very transparent with everything they've been doing with that console right from the beginning. I mean, this Digital Foundry video is from March. So this teardown was from a long time ago. You can tell how confident they have been with their design and with their decisions, and even with the fact that they have been sending out the Xbox Series X already to tons and tons of YouTubers and influencers. To me, I don't know, there seems a little bit of concern. It could just absolutely be nothing. PlayStation may just want to keep everything under wraps until November 12th so nobody can copy them and nobody can talk about it or share the ideas that they have. Could be that as well, but that's just what I think about this. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below. Do you think the PlayStation 5 build is better than the Xbox Series X, or vice versa? Do you think that Sony may be hiding something and that's why they have everything in a controlled environment and the public and reviewers and journalists or any of those people have not really been able to get their hands on a preview model of the PlayStation 5? I would really love to hear your thoughts below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. Make sure to subscribe if you're new to this channel and you enjoy what you're seeing and you like talking about the next generation, as I will continue to be doing that, and I will be getting the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X on day one, making tons of videos on that. So thank you guys all for watching. Really appreciate all the support. I'll catch you in the next video.